Hi guys, welcome to my fourth video on finding the roots. So now I want to look at an example that looks like this. Again, when we saw my previous videos, we wanted equal to 0. We are still seeing that this is not equal to 0, so we have to move this over here. We've got to move this to this side to make it equal 0. So how do we do that? We're going to say minus 5x because we're pulling this over here. So we're going to say minus 5x, okay? So 5x minus 5x would give us that 0 here equals, how do we combine all of these? So we have 2x squared. Does any of them have a 2x squared? No. So we're going to write 2x squared. Now let's find one that would suffice our b. This one, minus 5, has an x. Does any of them just have a plain x? Nope, so we're going to say 5x, okay? And then we are going to have our minus 3, so negative 3. Because we're now combining our like terms, and we're not combining this 5 with anything because this one just has a plain x, okay? I'm just giving you a minute to let you look at this and to let it sink in. We are combining our like terms, and this one's the only one with an x squared. This is the only one with just a plain x, and this is the one with no x. That's our c. All right, now let's go ahead and get into this. We're going to go ahead and determine what our a, b, and our c is. So our a is 2, our b is negative 5, and our c is negative 3. So let's go ahead and determine what a times c is. And a times c, a is 2, times c is negative 3, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So let's go ahead and identify our a times our c and our b. So now let's go ahead and find two numbers that multiply to be our a times our c, which is negative 6. And those same two numbers have to add to equal negative 5. Okay, and that's our b. Okay. Let's just start by finding the factors of negative 6, okay? So we have 1 times 6, and we have 2 times 3. Now, I know it has to multiply to be a negative and add to be a negative, which means one of them has to be negative, and this one tells me, oh, the bigger one has to be negative. So 1 minus 6 equals negative 5, and that's going to be the two numbers we choose for our blanks, because 2 minus 3 equals negative 1, and that's not what we're looking for, okay? So we're going to go ahead and put in our blanks 1 times negative 6 gives us negative 6, and 1 plus negative 6 gives us negative 5. And remember, the point of finding these numbers, it replaces that b value, okay? So now let's go ahead and get into factoring by grouping. So we're going to take our a, keeping our a, it's 2x squared, plus 1x, minus 6x, and then we take our c, minus 3. So let's go ahead and group these, okay? So I have this one, so I'm going to write 2x squared plus, and I'm just going to go ahead and write x. Even though it's got a 1x, we know that there's an understood 1 here. And I'm going to take this one and write negative 6x minus 3, drawing in my ladders. What do these two have in common? An x. So 2x squared divided by x, that one leaves you with a 2x, plus x divided by x is 1. Now with this one, I see that we have a negative, so I'm going to pull out my negative to change all of these signs. And what do these two numbers have in common? A 3. So negative 6 divided by negative 3 is going to be 2x, and negative 3 divided by negative 3 is going to be a plus 1. Perfect. They match. We're on the right track. So let's go ahead and write our answer in factored form. And we're going to go ahead, let me scoot this down, and we're going to say x minus 3, so x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. And then we're finding our roots, or we're finding our 0, so we're going to go ahead and say equal 0. Now, we're just going to split these two in half, and we're going to equal them to 0. So we're going to say x minus 3 equals 0, and 2x plus 1 equals 0. This one is right here, and this one is right here. We just split them into two pieces and equal them to 0. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and solve for our x. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line here and draw my line here just to set us up so we know that we're doing the same kind of process. So x minus 3, how do we get this 3 over here? We do the opposite. So to cancel this out, we're going to say plus 3 plus 3. And that's going to be x equals 0 plus 3 is 3. And here, we drew our line. And we need to work away from the variable. So if it's plus 1, we're going to do minus 1, minus 1. So we're going to cancel that out, and that's 2x equals negative 1. We're still not done because we still have this number here. And when they're together, when your number is touching your variable, that means it's multiplication. So we're doing the opposite, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So divide by 2, and x is going to equal negative 1 half. Okay, sorry, I had to move the camera down so you could see what I was writing. Now let's go ahead and write these as our points. So if we know x is 3, 0, which is our y, and x is negative 1 half, 0. Okay, and these two are your answers. These are your roots. Let's go ahead and look at one more example. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I'm going to scoot this back up here. All right. And I want us to look at something that looks like this. So we have 6x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals negative 6x squared. Okay, wow, we have our trinomial, but it's still not equal to 0, so what do we do? Okay, I know that I'm going to make this 0, so if this is a negative 6x squared, I'm going to do the opposite and say plus 6x squared. Now, I already know I have my 3 pieces. So where am I putting the 6x squared? Near the 6x squared, right underneath it. We're going to combine this plus 6x squared, okay? Because we're going to cancel this out and make it a 0. We're combining our like terms. So this one has the x squared, so it goes with the x squared. So 6x squared plus 6x squared is going to be 12x squared. Nothing combines with our x, so we're going to say minus 5x minus 2, and that equals 0. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and factor like normal. We do not have a GCF here, so let's go ahead and do our A, B, and C. Our A is 12, our B is negative 5, and our C is negative 2. So our A times C is going to be 12 times negative 2, and 12 times negative 2 is negative 24. So this is your A times your C, and your B is going to be a negative 5. So let's go ahead and fill in our little puzzle piece. So blank times blank. What two numbers equal our A times our C, which is negative 24? So our A times our C. And those same two numbers have to add together to give us our B, which is negative 5. Okay, so let's think about two numbers that multiply to 24. So 1 times 24. Okay, I'm going to move my camera over. 1 times 24. 2 times 12. 3 times 8. 4 times 6. And I think that's it, okay? All right, so these are our factors of 24. Now we know they have to multiply to be a negative, so one of these, either this column or this column, is going to have to be a negative, okay? Now we know it has to add to be a negative, which means if this is a negative, that means our bigger numbers are going to be negative, our bigger numbers. So let's go ahead and just throw in these negatives here, and let's just see what they give us. So 1 minus 24 is going to be negative 23. That's not negative 5. 2 minus 12 is going to be negative 10. That's not negative 5. 3 minus 8 is negative 5. That's negative 5. And just to check this one, 4 minus 6 is going to be negative 2. So we know these two are the factors that we're going to use. So we're going to write 3 and then a negative 8 and 3 and a negative 8 here. So 3 times negative 8 is 24. And 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. And the point of this is that these two numbers replace our B value, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to get into factor by grouping. So we're going to keep our A. So we're going to say 12x squared, okay? Now we're going to come down here and we're going to have plus 3x minus 8x, and then we're going to go ahead and keep our C, which is negative 2. So now we are getting into grouping. And we're going to go ahead and split these into two pieces. So we're going to say 12x squared plus 3x and negative 8x minus 2. Draw in your ladders. Go ahead and do that. What do these two have in common? They both have a 3 in common, and they both have an x in common. I'm sorry, I'm scooting my camera over. Because we can do 12 divided by 3, which is 4, and x squared divided by x leaves us with an x, plus 3x divided by 3x is 1. Okay? Now, I'm looking over here, and I do see a negative, so I'm pulling out my negative, okay, because I want to change all of these signs. And what do these two have in common? A 2. So negative 8 divided by negative 2 is going to be 4x, and negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a plus 1. And these two match. Perfect. Let's go ahead and write our answer in factored form. So we have 3x minus 2. So we're going to say 3x minus 2 times these two match. So write it once. 4x plus 1. And go ahead and write equal to 0. Okay, we're equaling it to 0. So now I'm going to just divide these two pieces and say 3x minus 2 equals 0. On this piece, 4x plus 1 equals 0. Okay? Now we're just going to be solving for x. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line here. We got to work away from the variable. So if this is minus 2, we're going to say plus 2 because we're getting rid of that. So we have 3x equals 0 plus 2 is 2. These two are together, that's multiplication, so we're going to do division, divide by 3, canceling that out. X is going to equal 2/3, okay? Go ahead and leave it as a fraction, no problem, perfect, okay? Now let's go over here and look at this one. I'm going to go ahead and draw our line. Same here, we're trying to move this piece over, we work away from the variable. So if this is plus 1, we're going to say minus 1, canceling that out. 4x is going to be equal to 0 minus 1 is negative 1, right? Now, we know these two are together, that's multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to say divide by 4. So x is going to equal negative 1/4. So we have found those two. So let's go ahead and write them as points. So if x is 2/3, so we're going to say 2/3, comma, 0 here, and this one is negative 1/4, comma, 0 here. Okay, and those are your two roots, zeros, x-intercepts.